With us today is the chairman of Promise Keepers, Ken Harrison. Ken, our culture has really changed a lot, and we saw it in the Olympics. What's happened to the idea of traditional manhood and even traditional values of civilization?
Well, there's a scriptural illiteracy. And the problem is we don't know how to think critically. I was thinking about the Governor Walz, who's now the vice president nominee. He said some people's social activism, socialism is other people's neighborliness. And I thought, how would anybody fall for that? Think about that. What that means is if my neighbor is in trouble and I help my neighbor, then I have made a choice to serve the Lord, and I've made a relationship with my neighbor and I've helped them. Socialism is where the government decides my neighbor's in need and forcibly takes from me and gives to them. Now there's no relationship, there's no love, there's no choice. We should be able to, as Americans, to easily see these things, and we're not. And so now it's so incredibly obvious when a man says he's a woman. It's one thing to say Christian love says this guy really wants to put on a dress, so it's a guy in a dress. But it's another thing entirely to say he put on a dress and now he's a woman, because he can't give birth. He can't go through all the things that make a woman a woman. And so what we're doing is we're taking away from femininity. And I say this all the time, Governor. It's not an attack on masculinity. There's an attack on femininity. And it's being able to happen because of weak men not standing up for the truth.
It's refreshing that some women are finally starting to push back, in part because of the fact they're losing what they fought for 50 years to have, which is Title IX, sports equity, where they get to actually participate in sports with some level of credibility and support. They're losing that because a guy decides, I'm going to swim against the girls. Maybe he's not worth being on the team with guys, but he's number one in the world if he swims with girls. And it's not because girls are inferior, but they are different. And we're just losing that concept of difference. And I loved what you said, that a man putting on a dress is a guy in a dress. It's not a guy having just become a woman. But let me mention, Tim Walz, you brought him up, vice presidential candidate. He signed legislation to put tampons in the boys' bathroom because he thought that if there were boys who identified as women, they might need those tampon machines. I mean, that was just head scratching to me.
You know, I was asked one time on a TV interview, what is the biggest sin that's destroying America and the church? Because the two are linked still, because we're still a Judeo-Christian background nation. And I said greed. And I remember the host said, I thought you would have said pornography. Well, pornography is a symptom of greed. Pornography is growing because of greed. But what's going to change all this, and it's going to be who stands by and was standing for truth, will be when somebody gets less money because of it. And so all it takes is some guy who's the last guy, cut from the Dallas Mavericks to decide he's going to play in the WNBA. Because I don't think people realize the physical difference between men and women. And if some guy who's the last guy cut from an NBA team plays in the WNBA, he's going to score 100 points a game and there will be no more games. He'll just dominate the entire game. And that's when we'll start to see changes, because suddenly the greedy people won't be making as much money. The only reason this is being pushed down our throat right now so much is because of greed, because people are making money on this. The time is a-coming, because right now they're competing in a few Olympic sports. But as soon as they start competing at a point at which people are making less money, then we'll make a difference. And the other thing, and I wrote an article for the Washington Times on this, the other thing that's going to happen is when people start to see just how much more physically able men are than women, because I don't think after 30 years of Hollywood propaganda, we really get that. People are going to start asking, why do we have female firefighters? Why do we have female police officers who are in combat? Because that's life or death. And when, I think I used to be a Los Angeles police officer. Back in the day when I was a policeman and we saw a shooting, which was constant, it was in Compton, we were off on foot pursuit after a guy. We'd catch the guy, be dangerous. 2 police officers take him down, take him to jail. Now they're teaching, don't pursue him, set up a whole perimeter. So you have to have 8 police cars lined up the streets and an air unit and a police dog to do what 2 cops used to do. Now it takes 18 cops, 16 cars and a dog and a helicopter. So because women can't chase these guys anymore. So as this starts to become more obvious, people are going to start asking these questions, kind of like after the Trump assassination attempt. Look at those Secret Service agents. They don't look like they should be there. I think right now we're going to start to see a cross of this agenda and money and some uncomfortable questions asked, and they're going to start running from this issue quickly. And people are going to remember who stood for the truth and who didn't.
You know, the economy is uncertain. You never know whether your money's worth as much today as it was yesterday. It's one of the reasons I buy gold from American Hartford Gold. American Hartford Gold has earned a 5-star rating and an A+ from the Better Business Bureau. Be sure to tell them Mike Huckabee sent you. They'll give you up to $15,000 of free silver on your first qualifying order. Call 844-417-1010 or text Mike to 998899. You'll be glad you did business with American Hartford Gold. I think it's important when I hear people, and you know, this is disturbing, Ken, but I've even heard some so-called evangelical Christians say, well, you know, it's fine because if a person chooses to identify as a female, then we should just respect that. The Bible didn't say anything about it. Jesus doesn't say anything about it. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, he actually did. I mean, Jesus did say male and female. He created them. So, you know, this is nonsense to say that the Bible is silent on issues like same-sex marriage and transgenderism. It's actually rather explicit. Am I being fair?
Yeah, you know, one of the biggest lies is, well, that Jesus didn't say anything about it, so it must be okay. And they've used that to justify homosexuality. He never mentioned it. Well, you know, he never mentioned slavery either. So I guess based on their mentality, slavery must be okay as well. So let's get away from that. And let's remind people of scriptural literacy that Jesus, who is God, was the same God of the whole Bible. And that God actually condemns men who put on women's clothes. It's actually in the Israeli law, or the Jewish law, that there's a punishment. So it was an anathema that a man should put on women's clothes. So it did. The Bible did address that. And let's remember that was written by Jesus, who is God.
Promise Keepers has had a great influence on men through the years and causing men to rethink that the most important role they have is that of spiritual leader for their families, for their communities. Is there still a desire among men to be spiritual leaders? Are we getting to the place where masculinity is so out of style that Promise Keepers is losing in terms of interest, that men want to learn how to be strong and effective as servant leaders?
You know, I think both are true, Governor. We have, each of us, we're all created in God's image. All of us are created with an inherent desire to do what's right and to abhor what's wrong. And the reason we need Jesus is because we do wrong anyway, because of our sinful nature. But men want to be strong. And there is a strong thing in the satanic lies of society, and we see this with this leftist stuff going on, is we want to make you seem like the battle's already lost, so why try? I mean, we see that everywhere. We see all the propaganda going on in the press right now, which is just blatant lies. And that's the same thing with men. And so men have an inherent desire to be masculine, to be men, to treat women with respect and gentleness, to value the most incredible thing in all of humanity, which is the ability to create life in your body, which only women can do, and lift that up as something great. So when we just had a Promise Keepers event last week in Tulsa, and it was a raucous event. Jim Caviezel spoke, and Charlie Kirk, John Bevere, and they said, man, I've never seen a crowd so engaged. So we had about 2,000 guys there that were excited to be there. Why weren't there more? I think it's because this defeatist, too many guys are sitting around watching Fox News and complaining instead of saying, I'm a man, let me get up and lead my family, start standing for truth. And that, well, the road that we're on, I'm telling you, Governor, Promise Keepers will be a big, something that really matters again. But I think it's a slow pull to these guys and these churches. Churches promote this because, you know, you go to most mega churches today and you'll see a huge budget for the children's ministry, for the women's ministry. You might not even have a men's ministry. And if there is one, it's really underfunded because a lot of guys don't know what to do. Well, okay, let's have Promise Keepers step in and help the church to have masculinity courses, because that's what we've got to teach guys, is how to be servant leaders.
That is a great point. And I hope people not only are listening, but are taking notes and getting in touch with Promise Keepers to make sure that that becomes a part of the church's lifestyle.